No.
Can I check it? Peace and harmony, peace and harmony. I have that. Okay. In this I know that there is only one essence, one power, one spirit that is here, present now, and I am with that. And I know as I am with it, so it comes in within each and everyone who is here present this evening. And I know that there is only knowledge and support and love that is shared in this room. And there is grace and beauty in all that we do and all that happens here tonight. And I am so blessed with this knowing. I am so grateful knowing that there is only love. And I release this word into the law, knowing that it is accurate. And so it is. So it is. Nice. So, chapters 7 and 8. Really good ones, right? Mm-hmm. Anyone have any comments on them? Because these were full of the real meat of what Troward is talking about. We've gone through all of the basics, and this is where Troward starts really talking about how it applies and how we can see even more clearly where Ernest Holmes took these concepts and brought them into science of mind. And so, what did you think of receptivity? Anybody want to start us out? Because you know I will if you don't. That's not a threat. It may have sounded like it. Well, let's start here. I suggested that you, when you go home and over the week, that you take some physical objects that you liked, thought about them, and go back to that spiritual essence of what they were. What was the spiritual prototype that started that object, and how does it benefit you? Did anyone actually do that? You guys are worse than my early college. Yes.
I tried it. I found it difficult because I realized once I got home that I really did not understand what the spiritual prototype is. You had said in class, oh, all of you know it, and I didn't speak up.
And we discussed it in several different facets. So right. What is the spiritual, let's start there then. That's a great point to start at.
The only thing I could think of, I sat and I thought about it and said, okay, let me think of spirit, and therefore, thinking of spirit, I then started thinking of qualities of spirit.
Right.
Saying, okay, if that is the original essence, then my kitten, its essence is the qualities that I'm seeing manifested, which is joy, playfulness, harmony, vibrant life, vibrant energy. So that's what I took to mean spirit, prototype.
That's it exactly, right? So some people say, oh, when you want a new car, you manifest the new car, like we talked about in that first one. Or Edwin Gaines is like, well, I want a white on white convertible, right? But Holmes also says that it's the essence of the thing. We're looking for safe, reliable, flashy, perhaps, transportation, but that feeling, it's the feeling of what that convertible gives to you, right? Charlie's new Prius gives him money in his pocket, perhaps. That gives him a feeling of joy, I don't know, or security, or what is that for you, excuse me, Charlie, if you took it back to the spiritual prototype?
Yeah, sort of a cheapskate, so it gives me economy.
It gives it, right.
Yeah.
Okay, so it goes to the feeling behind it, right? And that's what you're talking about too. So you were right, all along, you did know. We do know. That's the spiritual prototype right there. What else? Did anyone not do that, really? What do your boots give you?
My boots?
Yeah.
Can I pick a better one?
Okay.
My boots make me so happy because they're cute and they're comfortable.
Okay.
So happiness and enjoy, and they were economical because I got them on sale.
Oh, yeah.
And I did look at it a little bit, and I looked at it more like not only that, but also like how, like I looked at kind of the bigger nuances, and I'm in Prac 1 we're having to do this also, so maybe it bled over for me, but like the bigger nuances of like how I created things into my life. So if you want to take the boots as an example, so I had black boots first, and I absolutely loved them, and I wanted brown boots for a long time, and so like I can kind of see like this is like a really silly example, but the like overlying patterns of like how I had to be in a vibration to find boots that I loved on sale that made me really happy and feel good, and that I liked the way they looked. So, and you can kind of take that for anything, whether it be stuff or experiences. I just had a big experience where in a relationship that was super toxic, and before she came into my life, I said, I will never, ever, ever say this again. Because I never understood why people got attached to people that were toxic to them. Like, I didn't understand why a woman would stay with a man who was abusing her. I just didn't get it. And so I said, like, I wish I could experience that level of attachment. So that I could understand for my business, because I do women's stuff in business. And yeah, I had this horrific relationship that went on forever, and I was super attached. And so I can see how I created that, and now that I'm on the other side of it, I can see how powerful it was and what a good thing it was, even though I was in it for a long time.
Right. So you created a spiritual prototype. So you created be a spiritual prototype for kittens, right? Do you prefer Chuck or Charles?
Chuck.
Okay.
I was not here last week, but as it happens, I think the universe was having me do this exercise anyway, because I'm in the process of moving to a larger workspace, and my mother passed away, I think about 2 years ago, and my father is trying to downsize and get rid of things, and I find myself collecting things that he's going to give away, and I have to look at them, and I'm wondering, why am I really keeping this? I really don't want to bring her back. We did not have a good relationship. Right. But I found that like by keeping these things, it reminds me of some of the good things that she was. Like she was a real, like she has all these African violets that he's just letting die. He doesn't know indoor plants from nothing. So I've been taking them as they're wilting and bringing them back to life, and you know, it reminds me, well, she was all these other things that I can dwell on, but she was a nurturer, and she always had these beautiful plants. There was one plant in the dining room that I thought it was artificial for years until it started dying. And then I realized, oh, this is something she was keeping alive, and now no it is. So I found myself doing that and with not only things that I've collected from her recently, but just with things in my environment that, well, do I want this, do I not? And, you know, why do I have this?
Right, right. Good, that's a great example. Were you going to say something, Dennis?
Yeah, well, this section and what we talked about, you know, the spiritual prototype went so well for me because I've been, on the Jewish calendars, the New Year and the high holy days, and this is Yom Kippur, when the high priest would go into the temple and, you know, come out and, you know, intercede for the people and then bless them.
Right.
But there's 10 days between the New Year and Yom Kippur. Some call it the days of repentance or the days of awe. And I was reading some really tremendous book, Estelle Frankel, called Spiritual, Sacred Therapy. And some people think that 10 days are like repentance, confessing your sins, all that. But she brought up the point where it's going back to your spiritual prototype, what you truly are, what you were created for, and just dropping all the dross off and seeing yourself as perfect and complete.
Right.
So, yeah, I work this.
Yeah, that matches right up. That's a good one. I always thought that's what the 10 days were. I didn't know that that some people were associating them with.
Well, the word is shuva,
Mhm.
so it can be translated repentance, or it could be translated return.
Right. Right. Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah.
What? Troward's pointing, let's leave it. Speak up, girl.
I really enjoy the birds, watching the birds. So I was thinking about the spiritual prototype there, and I was thinking, there's so much freedom there, and just a lot of energy and a lot of freedom, and that's what I was thinking about the spiritual prototype.
Right. Good. Good. Anyone else? Yeah, Thomas.
Yeah, I thought about a cat, and
More cats. I just love
It's
our
not.
community.
we walk our cat. So in walking our cat, he'll be looking at birds, be looking at studying this and that. But then occasionally he'll just turn his head and look me in the eye, and then there's a connection that I have with him, connection of love, and just that connection. And then I'll pet it, and then he'll go on walking. So doesn't happen too often, but every now and then does. So I'd say that like a deeper connection with animal connection.
That animal connection which gives you love
Yeah.
and joy. Yeah, I relate to that a lot. In just unconditional love, cats. I just love them. And I did, because I love them so much, I was offered 2 more that I turned down. But if anyone wants a temporary shelter for 2 wonderful 4-year-olds, just temporary, 2 to 3 months, indoor, outdoor cats, let me know. Anyway, maybe you're manifesting that and you don't know yet. Until they show up on your doorstep. So that is the spiritual prototype. I had my own experience with that when I was in Minnesota recently. And it's a little bit of a long story, but here's the catch, and I'm going to make you bear with me as I tell it, because it goes to what we're talking about here, the difference between intelligence and undifferentiated spirit, as well as this concept of spiritual prototype, and how much volition we have. And I always will kind of reference an empty whiteboard because I drew on it once. And I assume that you can all see what I'm referencing.
It's all an illusion anyway, so.
What's that?
It's all an illusion anyway.
It is. And so when I left my sister's house, I was going to visit friends down in Rochester, and I had made myself kind of cheap hotel accommodations that looked good online. And I stopped at a store that specializes in stones and things, and I picked up some pipestone, 3 blocks of pipestone, approximately 3 pounds each, and they wrapped each one individually. And I took off, and because of that, I left Bemidji a little bit late, and it's 5 hours from Rochester. So I got down there, and I missed Disney, so I couldn't go in. And so I went over to the hotel, and it was already dark. And I stood in the parking lot and I thought, like that. That's pretty much what I thought. Like, oh my God. There were people outside, smoking, and they had beers, and it was like, I can't stay here. And I thought, I have to, because it's already like 9 o'clock, and I have a 7 a.m. flight. And so I thought, okay, so I just went in, and the woman was just so sweet and stuff, and then that morning she came and she woke me up by knocking on the door, which scared me, but when I opened the door, I looked through the little hole, and she was standing there, and she's like, we don't have like the telephone stuff, so I thought I would just bring you a cup of coffee. Oh, thank you, but I started,
Yes, baby.
so I started, do you want me to put it somewhere else?
No, it's working now.
Is it working? Anyway, so we start, I took off, I got my stuff together and I left, but again, I left a little bit late, and I was speeding on this stretch of an hour to Minneapolis, which is pretty much a straight stretch from Rochester back and forth. And, thank you. Thanks for trying, though. I appreciate it. So, I had it on cruise control, and I got pulled over, and I knew I was late for my flight. I felt late. And all this time, when I left Bemidji, it had been kind of traumatic with my sister, and I had said, I need to get away, I need to take some time for myself. I need to just slow down, right? So here I am speeding to Minneapolis, and I get pulled over. And the officer comes up to the window, and I just look at him and I hand him, I think he goes, where are you going so fast? And I said, I'm late, I'm left late for a flight in Minneapolis. And he was like, okay, hang on, I'm gonna check your stuff and I'll be right back. And it took him 15 minutes to come back. And by then I was like, I was really anxious. And he came back and he gave me a warning. He said, I'm just gonna give you a warning. And I was like, because I'm tired, I haven't slept, I had a lot of stress with my own family, I missed my friends, and I felt bad about that. Now I was late for my flight to go home, and he was like, here's the thing, set your cruise control for 59 instead of 64, because I told him I had set it at 64. He says, you know, you're going to get to your flight on time. You know, I did ask what time my flight was. You're going to be fine. It'll be okay. Just set it there. You know, it'll be a little bit slower, but you're going to get there. So I was like, I started crying. He was like, it'll be okay. And I just put my head on the steering wheel and sobbed for a few minutes. And then I started going, and I set it, and I get there, and they've changed the terminals. They were the Lindbergh, Humphrey, and International Terminal, and now they're the ones 2 and 3. And I was like, which one is the Lindbergh Terminal? So while I was trying to figure that out, I'm late for my flight, right? I drove past them, and I had to go 2 miles before I could do a U-turn and come back, and I still didn't know which one was which, and I was crying in the car. And then it's like the Future 26 signs. There was this old sign that said Lindbergh Terminal this way. So I took that exit, and I got in there, and I run in with my rental car, and I pull up behind this other car, and just as I jump out of the car, that car leaves, and this woman comes up, and she goes, pull that car up. And I'm like, and she goes, don't worry about it. Thank you. And I'm like always on the verge of tears, and I'm like, I gotta get to my plane. I know this has got a point. This is the same thing I did at the licensing, isn't it? So I'm like kind of frantic, and she takes my bag out, and she goes, wait a minute, here's your coffee mug. And I start going again, and thank you. She goes, just a moment, and she pulls out my plug charger right out of the thing. Like, thank you. I'm like, I don't care about the charger. And so then I start off, and she goes, excuse me, and I'm like, what? And she goes, do you know where you're going? And I said, no. And I started crying. So she sent me on my way. This is a day that started yesterday afternoon, remember. So I get there, and I get checked in, and I get on the plane, and we're supposed to be taking off. The plane's delayed, and they're kind of vague about why. They're saying, oh, there's a seal here under the wing that needs to get replaced. It's like, that is so weird. And then they switched, you know, passengers were switching seats, and I was just sitting there. I thought, that's so weird. So we didn't leave for an hour and a half. I missed my connection in Atlanta, and all of those planes were full, so I didn't get home till I left this 7 o'clock flight. I didn't get home till after 9 that night. I spent 6 or 7 hours in Atlanta. And, but during that time, I found the Atlanta Chapel in the airport. Did y'all know there's a chapel in the airport? A lovely little quiet sanctuary. I talked with some amazing people. I did all of this stuff. And then I got on the plane. I'm like, this isn't bad. I'm okay. This was all meant to be. I had some time. I get home. I grab my suitcase. I go out to my car, and my car battery's dead. And I'm like, and I even call Nancy Walton, and I'm like, wow, 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 wow. And she's like, uh-huh, oh, uh-huh. And she was very good. And then I called someone else. They couldn't come. I belong to AAA, but I know they're really slow in this town. So I called AAA, and they couldn't be there for 90 minutes. And I thought, I can't wait 90 minutes. So I went back in the airport, and I said, I grabbed this poor little maintenance man. I was like, is there anyone here who can jump my car? And he was like, actually, ma'am, there is. There's, just go to the service desk. And so I went to the service desk, and they were so excited to help me. And before I got back to my car, someone was at my car. So all of this happened. I get home, I just throw my suitcase in the house, and I'm exhausted, so I just kind of fed my cats and went to bed. And get up in the morning, and I open up my suitcase, and it has been ripped apart. It has been, every zipper, and I'm very neat. I'm a minimalist packer because I'm a backpacker. Everything's rolled, everything's in its place. It's a mess. And I realized at that moment, because every block of my pipestone had been unwrapped, and the wrapping was everywhere, that when they scanned my bag running through at the last minute, they didn't know what that was, and so they held the plane. And then they put me next to a marshal. An air marshal. And so the point of this story, it sounds so outrageous, is I created that from the moment I left Bemidji, my hometown. I said, I'm just going to run in here, talk to these people really fast. I'm going to buy this pipestone because some of it's a gift and some of it's for me. And I wanted to make sure it was, real pipestone from Pipestone, Minnesota. And it's all certified. They wrapped it up real tight and secure, which they do, in bubble wrap and newspaper and all of it. And I got home and I've been saying, I need to slow down. I need to slow down. And my whole 24 hours was one of slowing down, rushing, and then going, nope, you're not going anywhere. You're not going anywhere right now. You need to slow down. And so that was my spiritual prototype from the moment that I got up that morning. I have to leave here so that I can have some time and slow down. And it just continued to unfold because I didn't listen. Right? Which is my thing. I tend to see the signs and not listen. And that goes to exactly what we're talking about today, is that difference between intelligence of undifferentiated spirit as a matter of feeling rather than definition. And I was defining it, but I hadn't been feeling it, and it kept coming in, and until I allowed it inside and I was able to feel it, I couldn't get that peace that I was so desiring. It was always tinged with this anxiety. So everything, if we want love, but we're unsure of it, it all goes back to what we talked about a couple of weeks ago. Where is our own psyche when we're putting it in, right, to that universal process, and how is it being manifested when it comes out? Is it truly a mirror of what we put in, or is it only a mirror of what we think we want? I really want peace and joy, but my whole world was hurry up, get there, hurry up, get there, hurry up, get there, right? That's the question I'm posing to you. How is that working? Do you have to? Oh, this side?
Test.
It's on, just plug it in, yeah, put it on right now.
Put it on.
How's that, David?
Okay.
How's that, David?
We'll know in a second, go ahead. You can talk.
Can I talk?
Yeah.
How's that, David? Is that too loud?
No.
It sounds loud in
It's
my
just
ears.
finally coming out.
Okay.
I just want to throw out there that this is the second story that you've given us in 4 weeks of how the universe tried to tell you to slow down and you didn't listen. The whole
Right.
missing of the keys.
Oh, yeah.
You should just slow down.
That's the same trip, right?
What?
That was the day, it just sounds so loud to me.
No, you're good.
It's mostly for the camera.
Okay, I think it's because I'm used to projecting my voice for a classroom, but, so, I could whisper and you could hear me. This is a
Talk
new
normal.
experience.
Yeah, just
That's
talk
the same
normally.
trip, that was the following morning on my way to school. Yeah, so, okay.
You're leaving.
So, idea of intelligence as apart from individuality.
Before you leave.
Say it again.
The idea of intelligence as apart from the idea of individuality. Do you not recall reading this?
Oh, no, I'm right there with you.
Okay.
I
So-
really liked that part.
So what is meant then, let's go back to undifferentiated spirit. What was meant by undifferentiated spirit? Do you recall?
It's the law.
It is the law. I'm sorry, folks. You guys, David, and I can't deal with this. It's way too loud in my own head.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, it's just way too loud in my own head. I already hear my voice. Thank you. We'll figure it out. Hi, Nina. So, let's look at some of this then. Because he talks about the difference between intelligence of undifferentiated spirit as a matter of feeling rather than one of definition. So when we feel it, we just talked about that. We can talk about love, but love is one of those abstract concepts, right? So is peace, so is relaxation. All of those things that we seek, joy, they're all abstract concepts. And so we have to be able to feel them because we can't really define them. We can only project what we think they are. And then depending on our level of self-esteem, self-concept, self-awareness, that might vary. So my idea of peace, and I want a vacation, slow down, was always tinged with this anxiety of being somewhere on time. And so that's what I got. I got stop and go, stop and go, and stop and go. And if I was able to relax, perhaps I would have just made my flight. You know, who knows what would have happened had I been able to relax. I don't know.
So what you are projecting onto the subjective mind is confusing. If you yourself are confused, that's what it's going to give back to you.
That's
Stop
right.
and go. Because it's not going to listen to the affirmation that you wrote or the words you're saying,
Right.
but what you're actually feeling, that's the language that
Right.
it's going to understand. And so it seems like the law worked exactly the way it was supposed to, based on what it was given.
Right. So you're right. The language is the language of feeling. So when people say, oh, it's the language of love, that's it, exactly. If we can define love through feeling and quit trying to identify it through the abstract concepts that so define romantic love in our culture that can create on some levels so much disturbance in our lives. And I know I'm looking at you, but for no reason. Does that help anyone, or does that make it more confusing?
That's good.
Thank you. That's it.
She was waiting for the knowledge.
I was waiting for acknowledgement. Because he also says bitterness, and this is what you were referring to, right? When Troward was talking about bitterness to the world, quote unquote, retarded true development of mankind, right? So that's what happens. And so if we're a universal share of the whole pie, then isn't he really commenting on the our individual lives and choices? Right? And so as we make those choices and those energies go out, whether or not this is our actual words, but our intent is something else, then that's what goes out into the world. That's what travels through space and time, so to speak.
Right, like what your intention, your stepping on the brake and the gas at the same time, and the universal source is giving you both.
Right, exactly. Popping my clutch
Yeah,
over and over. Yeah,
Because you're not aligned with what you're.
right.
you're-
What example would be, we've got Kristen's boots, we've got my experience with time flow. What do other people experience when you think you're asking for one thing, but something else is coming up? What is the prototype that you've actually put out there?
Usually a Guy Ritchie movie plot.
A what?
Usually a Guy Ritchie movie plot. So,
What does that mean?
I don't know who that is.
we don't have enough time.
A Guy Ritchie plot?
Guy Ritchie.
I don't know who that is.
He's a movie director, kind of convoluted in that
Ironic comedy.
ironic
weirdness,
convoluted, yeah.
How did I get here from here?
Right, he was married to Madonna, maybe that will help.
Or,
I love Madonna.
So to answer your question, mine doesn't show up for time. I kind of move through the world really slowly and assume it's gonna wait for me.
Okay.
But mine shows up with money, so I'll have like these. I do tons of affirmations and all of my work around money, and I almost always have plenty of money. Like I haven't run out of money in a long time, but like I still like get all of this like residual when I had to get my brakes done today, and that was a whole thing in and of itself. But at the end of the day, it was $150, and that wasn't a big deal. But 3 days leading up to it, I'm like, oh my God, where's this money? And I'm like, but I have it. Like, why am I freaking out? So that's where it shows up for me, where I see it's very similar sort of stories to your time stuff.
Right. Anyone else? Relationships, finances, health, time, peace of mind, all of those things. No? Okay. So what he also says is the input and the output are always equal. It's that thing, John does that experiment sometimes. He tried that one time in the sanctuary, if you remember, and he was pouring water and siphoning things out, and the siphon wasn't working, which I thought was an interesting experiment. but it's exactly that, right? That's kind of my experience in people's, especially around money or relationships. So it's always equal. The input and the output is always equal. Would you agree with Troward, or would you disagree?
What kind of input, I don't understand what it means by input. Mental, is this mental, intelligent input?
See, that's a really good question. I think that's exactly what Troward is saying. That our mental input, or emotional input, is equal to the amount of what we actually get mirrored back to us.
I don't know that I.
You don't agree with that? You don't think that's what he's saying? What do you guys think he's
Oh,
saying?
I think that's what he's saying. I don't agree with it.
Oh, that's what he's saying. You don't agree with it.
I don't know if I
What
agree
do you-
with it either.
Wait a second, let's let
Where
Selena
are we
finish.
at? Do you
Let's
know where
let-
we're at in the book?
Huh?
Page 22.
In this book?
Oh, no, I can't
Yeah.
go.
It's chapter 6,
Chapter 7.
what paragraph?
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to get caught up before Selena talked.
Okay, so, we are,
That just didn't, I guess that.
they're
just
long paragraphs. So it's actually the second paragraph towards the end of that. It says, raise X to any power you will, however vast may be the disparity between it and the lower powers. Both are equally commensurate with the universal reign of law. But this is also where he's saying, he's talking about what you put into it is what you get out of it. If you put X into it, you're gonna get a mirror of X back. Right? You found it in another place as well?
That's page 42 on this book.
Okay.
Not hard.
We can never get beyond the range of cause and effect. Selena, is that, you want to read it? You want me to read?
Well, I don't know where you, is it where it's the universal reign of law is a magnificent truth? It is one of the two great pillars of the universe, symbolized by the two pillars that stood at the entrance to Solomon's temple.
No, you're a bit further ahead. But it is that as well, actually, because he goes on to talk about, how do you say that, Jackie? Charlie, is it Joaquin or Joaquin?
Dennis should know, be able to help us with that.
Is it Joaquin or Joaquin? Yeah, pardon? Joaquin and Boaz, right?
Maybe,
But it's before that.
okay, if the infinite is that which is limitless and exhaustless, imagine vast capacity you will and have filled it with.
Are you in chapter 7?
Yeah.
At the end of paragraph 2?
Well, there's one paragraph.
Yeah, no paragraph, it's a really long passage.
Yeah, and there's the second paragraph. Yeah, that's what I am.
And then it says, oh, yeah, so you're right, the last sentence of it does say that.
It's just a very.
I see, you know what, the first part of that sentence is highlighted, and that's what I'm focusing on. So the second part of that sentence, that's why I'm like, yeah, it does go into that, but.
But how does that
you look
come
at
out
the-
to what you put in, you get out? I mean, how much you put in, you put in the same amount, certain amount, you get out a certain amount. How does that, how did you get that out of this paragraph is what I'm wondering?
Because it becomes the mirror image. We get exactly what we project into the field of energy, right? If you
Yeah.
look at the science of mind symbol, yeah, Chris.
So if you're putting love into the equation, you're getting love back.
Right,
So if you're putting out hatred, you're gonna get somebody that's not very nice to you back. You're gonna
Right.
get hatred back. So I see that's where you're mirroring,
Right.
equal in, equal out.
if you think you're putting love out there, but you're putting love out there with insecurity, that's exactly what you're gonna get back, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Right, and you're gonna encounter someone that you might be really attracted to in a platonic way as well as romantic relationship, but there might be tinged all sorts of insecurities out there. If that's what you're projecting out there, you're gonna get back what you project, because that's what we do with the prototype. We put the prototype into the subconscious, and the subconscious materializes as a mirror image through the teaching symbol, right? And that's what he's talking about here in several different ways.
I agree with that, like in a big picture sense, and I think in a perfect, like I think that that's what like our enlightened masters were doing, like Jesus would put something in and get something equal back out, but I don't know that it's that black and white in data, like I think there's a level of grace, like my positive thinking outweighs my negative thinking, so if I think and feel 10 times a day that I'm rich, then that one time a day that I have this issue of worry come up, and then like it's the whole like second thought that Barbara talks about. Like there's a level of grace there that makes it to where it at the very least doesn't appear equal in our day-to-day lives, even though yes, I think that law does work in a big picture sense. Does that make sense?
I do understand what you're saying. Yeah, I do. Yep, it's almost like probation. It's like I can think this bad thought for a little bit, but as long as I change it in the next few minutes, it'll be okay. See, I don't think it works that way.
I don't think it works that way.
But isn't that really what you're saying?
No.
A place of grace?
There is grace though.
But you have intent.
Right,
Yeah.
so if I have the intention of like, I know that I'm having crap thinking right now,
Right?
if I don't shift it, then that crap thinking is gonna manifest.
Right. But if you can shift
But
it,
if
I
you
agree.
shift it, yeah, and I think that I was talking to Nancy about this today, I think that the more you know, and this is in the next chapter, he talks about this, the more that you know about the laws, the faster the idea that the laws become personal, the faster the turnaround.
Right.
So it does become more and more equal, but I think there's a level of grace there. It's the same reason that a practitioner can overlay your consciousness and create something for you. Like if it was completely equal, that wouldn't work, I don't think.
I don't think that
It's equal
practitioners
in a
create
Jesus-
something for other people. I think that we hold consciousness for other people. And that's a big difference. I would ask a practitioner who's been one longer than myself to respond to that, and I'm looking at all of you right now, that I don't think that we create consciousness. I think we hold it. It's not, am I not right? maybe I'm doing it wrong.
You're correct.
Maybe.
That's how.
Wait, Drew was gonna say something, and then,
Well, with the putting energy, the whole what you put in, yeah, I get that as far as that, but I think the whole broad picture, as an analogy with it, I don't see it as putting it all in because you're forcing it. It's like, it's more of a state of being and allowing and putting yourself in that centered place and then gently hands.
right, I think that's a beautiful way to say that, yeah.
But I think the forcing, it's like forcing a smile.
Right.
You can smile,
Right,
but behind it could be anything, like rabid badgers or not getting your plane.
right. So I agree with you, I think that was a great way to phrase that too. What were you gonna say?
This was in regards to the practitioners. I couldn't remember the word. When you get practitioners to help you and treat for you, it seems to me like basically you're just magnifying the intent of what it is you want, and they're helping to magnify it as opposed to it's just coming from one person, it's coming from more than one. And I think it actually more than doubles, but I don't know what the straight mathematics are, but it seems to me that seems to be the case.
I'm gonna look to the practitioners in the room rather than, yeah, Thomas?
Yeah, when I do spiritual mind treatment, there's someone asked for a abundance. My job is to recognize that abundance as God, in God, and fulfill that in my consciousness as much as possible. And then that unfold that consciousness with that other person via the wording. But there's an energy that passes or that is there besides words. So a person asks for abundance, a person asks for love, you manifest love in your consciousness.
Right. Exactly that.
I misspoke with the word create, I apologize. That wasn't what
And that's what we're saying though.
I'm
But
getting
remember,
accurately
let's
across
take
what-
that back maybe to a couple of weeks ago when we talked about bypassing and how important our language is. And if you remember, thankfully, Christy Corna was not above correcting any one of us with our language. We could say, she'd say, well, you want to rephrase that one and just keep on walking, you know? That was a great thing about her consciousness, was that she could hear that stuff like in a heartbeat and help us reframe it. So that if we reframe it now, this is what you're saying, kind of a period of grace. If we reframe it, we can reframe the input as
Right.
well. Yes, I understand what
And
you're
you're
saying.
not necessarily going to create whatever you misspoke about.
No,
It doesn't immediately create. That's what I'm saying by it's not equal and it's not
see,
equal.
it's out there. I agree that it's not coming, it's not, may not, see, and I don't want to get into kind of this kind of weird dialectical argument either, but it's still, it's put out there. And whatever, it's kind of like language. Anything you say is irretractable, irreversible. You can never take something back. You can never say it again in exactly the same way. That's why verbal abuse is so destructive. Because you can say you're sorry all day long, but you can never retrieve it, you can never replace it, ever. It's there, it'll always hang there. And so do our phrases. But this is my thing as well, is that this is also that area, that gray area for me, where it almost seems like we're blaming people for misfortune, or what we perceive as misfortune. My whole story, my whole trip could be perceived as one of misfortune, instead of, wow, this is what I created. This was a great example, and look what happened for me. You know, I got to meet the nicest police officer in Minnesota, right? The nicest grumpy person at the budget car rental who just took one look at me. I met wonderful people. I felt the chapel. I sat in that chapel for a good hour, right? It's all in the perception of what we say, but it's always out there.
But, right, and like I said, in the big picture sense, it is
Right.
equal.
Right, yes.
Well, and a story that kind of correlates to your story that you started with today is that, for me, it's also changing consciousness, because I had a travel situation myself, and I was rushing out the door and I left my cell phone. And I had to get on a plane and go to Florida, and I didn't have time to turn around and go back and get my phone. So I just kept on traveling, and I spent an entire 2 days without a cell phone. And it was glorious, you know, and I could have been mad, I could have been upset, I could have been, you know, mad at the world because my phone is my communication, it's my GPS, it's my recording device that helps me to remember things. So it does a lot for me, but I found the, if you want to call it archaic ways to get a map. I had to pull a map out. You know, I had to use a telephone that was in the office. So it's that whole, I could have put out anger, and I could have put out upset and strife because I didn't have my cell phone. How do we live without them? But instead, I brought forth into my being a calmness, which I really actually kind of enjoyed, you know, because I wasn't connected. So it's changing, you know, you change your thought process, and it brings in that equal, as if you are angry, you're going to bring about other people coming at you with anger.
Right.
Or upset or strife. And if you're calm about it, then you can ask people for help.
Right.
You can ask somebody what directions.
Right. And then, Kristen, back to your dilemma, because you look not happy with our discussion. That's my perception, is that all of our masters, from Holmes to Troward to all of them, are talking of the ideal, right?
Right.
And so it's the ideal that we want to achieve, and the more we put the ideal into as our prototype, the easier it is to achieve and have it mirrored back to us through the subconscious. We want the ideal, right? Right.
She's pointing to the infinite metaphor.
Look past the whiteboard, through the whiteboard.
Anyone else want to raise anything about the chapter 7 that was difficult or kind of confusing, or something that made you really excited about it? Because I loved this chapter. These are the things that kind of like really got my mind rolling.
Had a little challenge with, he talks about universal personalness. And then in another place he says that the universal intelligence has no person, is no person. You mustn't think of it as a person at all.
Where are you?
Well, let's see. It's the third paragraph.
Okay.
And it's about, well, you can't go by pages, two different books.
So you're in the paragraph, it's an enduring truth, right? That's the beginning of the paragraph?
The paragraph is, yes, that paragraph.
Okay,
So
and
it's
so-
about maybe halfway down, where it talks about, it's talking about the royal arch through which way we may triumphantly enter the temple.
Right.
We must disassociate the universal personalist from every conception of individuality. And then in another, you know, he calls the universal, he coined that word, personalist.
Right.
To keep us from being confused.
Didn't work very well.
But when you think of the universal personalist, and yet it does have personality. In another place he says it has all the aspects of personality except individual selfhood. So it just takes a lot of contemplating.
What does that say to you, though?
It just helps me know that for me, the personal, I can't even say that word, personalness of the universal intelligence is what my connection that I feel, my oneness that I feel with spirit. That's the universal personalness. But it has no individuality because know, like I used to think of God as a man, you know, masculine and all of that stuff. That would be an individuality. So it helps me to get away from that old concept of what spirit is.
So I think you're absolutely right on, even with your question, and then your answer is right on. So Susie and then Linda.
Yeah, he actually calls it a paradox, which spirituality is filled with paradoxes. We must dissociate the universal personalness from every conception of individuality. The universal can never be the individual. That would be a contradiction in terms. But because the universal personalness is the root of all individual personalities, it finds its highest expression in response to those who realize its personal nature. Not a person, but and it is this recognition that solves the seemingly insoluble paradox.
Right.
I guess I don't know what the word paradox is.
Two things that contradict, they're both true, and yet they're a contradiction of each other.
They appear to be
They
a
appear
contradiction.
to be
They're
a
both
contradiction.
true, but appear to be a contradiction, like right and wrong.
Where was that?
Like light being a particle
The
anyway.
same paragraph toward
There's a lot of those kind of examples.
Page 44.
You could spend like.
How many of you knew the references? I'm just curious about the Via Dolorosa,
Yeah.
Joaquin and Boas, and how many of you knew those? Did everyone?
No.
Did anyone look them up
I looked
because you
up-
didn't know?
I looked up the Via Dolorosa.
Okay, so the Via Dolorosa is theoretically the path that Christ took after he was sentenced by Pontius Pilate when he was carrying the cross. And he was, you know, there were several things that happened to him along that way, right? That, you know, he was spit on and all of these things, he was beaten, all of that, and then he got to where he was crucified. And he references that as though that's often referred to as the path of tears or the paths of horror, no, not horror.
Suffering is the way of suffering. or
Suffering,
sorrow,
that's it.
Or the painful way.
That's the way Troward talks about it. But we can change that just upon reflection and just looking at what Christ stood for
He's saying we don't
theoretically,
have to
right?
go that way anymore.
We don't. We can change that into a path of joy.
Yeah.
Right. So what about the other two? Joaquin and Boaz. You familiar with the two temple pillars?
No.
No? So one is unity and one is love. And we can't have one without the other, right? The temple, our temple, we won't stand without unity and love. Theoretically is what Solomon had at the temple doors, was unity and love. And if one was God, the other, it wouldn't stand itself. Right? Is that correct? In a nutshell, would you like to expand on it?
Well, yeah, it's basically, it's information range as well. If you have the pillars, and you have to have these pillars. Without them, your base of everything falls.
Right, right. And that's unity and love, which is the universal prototype or the universal personalness. Okay. I tell you, anybody else want to make a comment right now? Yes, Linda.
What I wanted to say about universal personalness to me is it's like white light. White is all colors.
Mm-hmm.
So when it disperses, it can be any color, which is my personality. But when it starts, it's all personality.
That's a great metaphor. Or is that an analogy? I forget. An analogy, thank you. Okay, I think that's a great analogy. And how about we stop here and take that 10-minute break? So please come back about 5 after, which is really only 8 minutes.